This podcast is brought to you by Goldco. Get your free 2026 gold and silver guide at HannityGold.com today.
We have a lot of news coming out as it relates to Mr. Fang Fang, Swalwell. New video, by the way, just released, shows the accused rapist now partying with, quote, you'll love this, Linda, yacht girls. The people on the boat were told to keep hush-hush about Swalwell being on the trip. But anyway, a bleary-eyed Swalwell in a robe during a blowout trip on a yacht off of Saint-Tropez with a bevy of young women. I mean, this guy is a perv at the top level. Everybody listening to this program has women in their life that they care about. And if you look at any of these issues through the prism of how would you want your daughter, your girlfriend, your spouse, your mother treated, it takes on a whole different meaning, doesn't it? Let me play Swalwell's accuser, former staffer, who alleges that Swalwell basically sexually assaulted her in 2024. And here's what she said.
You don't remember anything. I remember the next day, I can see flashes of that evening of him on top of me pushing him off, him grabbing me. It was a lot more aggressive. It was aggressive.
Did you say no?
Yes, I said no. In my flash that I can recall, I was pushing him off of me saying no.
And what did he do?
He didn't stop.
I want to play one more clip, and then we've got a panel that we're going to discuss this with. A kind of jaw-dropping moment as Swalwell Accuser spills it all on national TV and just says outright, he raped me and he choked me. Listen to this.
I knew he was married at the time and that his wife was pregnant. He was my friend. On the third occasion, I believe he drugged my drink. I only had one glass of wine. We were supposed to go to a political event, and he said he needed to get paperwork from his hotel room. When I arrived at his hotel room, I was already incapacitated, and I couldn't move my arms or my body. He raped me, and he choked me, and while he was choking me, I lost consciousness. And I thought I died. I did not consent to any sexual activity.
All right, here to weigh in on this, we welcome back to the program Isabel Brown, host of the Isabel Brown Show on the Daily Wire. Also, Catalina Lauf is a political commentator, author of the forthcoming book, by the way, Time to Choose, Reclaiming Liberty from the Swamp. Thank you both for being with us. Isabel, as I think about this, it's kind of hard to wrap my arms around this one thing, and that is so many people apparently knew about this. This was common knowledge in California among politicians, around people in the community, and how did it stay under wraps for this long?
Sean, you painted the picture of this so beautifully there with just how truly horrific these allegations really are. And the extra layer of horror that I think the American people are struggling to reconcile with is the fact that this was very well known and an open secret, not just in California, as you mentioned, but here in Washington, D.C., where I live on Capitol Hill. CNN was reporting back in 2017 that more than half a dozen female staffers on Capitol Hill had spoken to them about a California congressman who they deemed to be very creepy and constantly advancing his way into personal sexual relationships with female staffers. This was nearly a decade ago that CNN was reporting on this, and I can't tell you how many posts I've seen on social media in the last 48 hours from journalists, from other politicians, from people in high positions of power and influence here in Washington who said, yeah, I knew about it and someone came and told me about it, but what could I have done? I'm not a journalist. I'm not law enforcement. Maybe I am a journalist, but that wasn't my beat, so it wasn't my place to report on it. It seems to me there is a disgusting double standard of law enforcement when you look at how the political left is now responding to this in the wake of these allegations becoming a whole lot more public. Why did no one seek to protect these women and prevent more victims from being victimized by such a depraved individual?
You know, the magnitude is breathtaking in terms of he's a known figure. And I mean, this is the worst of the worst behavior. You know, Catalina, let me go to you. He raped me. He choked me. While he was choking me, I lost consciousness. I thought I had died. I believed he drugged my drink. I had only one glass of wine. I did not consent to any sexual activity. He was married at the time, and his wife was pregnant. And he said he needed to get paperwork from his hotel room. And when I arrived to his hotel room, I was already incapacitated. I couldn't move my arms or my body. Wow.
Sean, it was incredibly disturbing to have to see that. But, you know, what an amazing point of bravery that these women are finally stepping forward. And to Isabel's point, you know, many of these cases would never have come to light if it hadn't been for that. But I am glad to finally see the Democratic Party holding one of their own accountable. You know, for years it's been believe all women until it's someone in their own party. And so at least now we're seeing some consistency and some principle, but that doesn't take away the fact that this was known and many women had stepped forward, you know, almost a decade ago. But imagine if these women didn't come forward now. You know, Eric Swalwell could have possibly been the next governor of California. And the fact that he was that close to assuming an executive position of power in the United States is so scary to think about. But this is what happens across the board. And, you know, Republican or Democrat, you know, I've got to give a lot of credit to Congresswoman Anna Paulina Luna, too, who said, look, this isn't about politics. This is about doing what's right. It doesn't matter, again, Republican or Democrat. If you have serious issues, documented incidences, arrests, you know, especially involving staff, you need to be held accountable.
You know, nobody seems to want to, Isabel, use the word rape. What we just heard is an allegation of rape.
It is, and it ought to be treated with the most seriousness and direct attention that it possibly can from law enforcement agencies, but also more culturally from the political apparatus, too. You know, I'm old enough to remember now at the ripe age of 28 years old that virtually every single year we hear this word tossed around as a political allegation. We remember it in the Brett Kavanaugh hearings. I certainly have heard it thrown around a whole lot related to the Epstein files and previous allegations that have been deeply investigated by law enforcement and deemed to not be credible in terms of a lot of these tips that you've seen released in these declassified documents from the DOJ. I hope and I pray that politicians in Washington, whatever side of the aisle they're on, take this allegation and the many that are accompanying it very, very seriously, and we treat it with the fullest extent possible in terms of prosecutorial next steps from the Department of Justice or whoever else needs to be involved. I worry, though, that we've heard that word diluted so much in our postmodern culture and in the era of Me Too with so many false allegations that people have become somewhat numb to it. Don't listen to these stories and brush it off as yet another political crazy thing happening in Washington, D.C. These are very real crimes. They are very serious accusations and allegations, and they deserve to be investigated with the fullest extent of law enforcement.
You know, Catalina, I mean, there is in most cases a fine line. This seems very clear cut to me. You have allegation after allegation after allegation. I mean, the most brutal allegations that any woman could ever make against any man. You know, compare that to, for example, the Kavanaugh case. I mean, it was dubious from the very beginning. It was a political play by the Democrats. They overplayed their hands. And I'll never forget one of the people testifying, well, there was a line outside this room, and among the people lined up to take turns and rape this woman that was clearly intoxicated was Justice Kavanaugh. And then that emerged into, well, I saw him near a line, but he was not in the line. And then it was, well, I saw him pouring drinks for women, but no, I never saw him pour a drink for a woman. And there was never any there in that particular case. And look at what an allegation, a false allegation, can do to somebody's life. I mean, this man was broken when he was given his testimony.
You're absolutely right, Sean. And it's infuriating of what they put Justice Kavanaugh and his family through.
And Clarence Thomas, for that matter.
and Clarence Thomas, and they use the same playbook over and over again on that. And to your point, it was allegations, it was scant evidence, and there they tried to ruin his life. And here you actually have videos, you have evidence, you have highly detailed reports, you have the police getting involved, you have so much here now. And you know, and to your point, Sean, earlier, this could be anybody's daughter, wife. You know, being in politics as a young female, it's a calling, it's a career to most, you know, women that want to get involved. And here you're subjected in these cases where there are real scummy people like the Eric Swalwells of the world in these positions of power, using their power to do these things against women, and in some cases you're not even believed. And again, you know, I hope, to Isabel's point too, that this is carefully examined through and through, and that this guy does, you know, is held accountable to the highest sense of the law. You know, everybody is innocent until proven guilty, but there's so much here that needs to be fully investigated.
Yeah, I totally agree. How do you think this ends, Isabel? I absolutely can see him spending the rest of his life in jail at this point. However, caveat, it's Alvin Bragg in New York bringing the first charges against him. I have no faith in him.
Yeah, I think we're right to be skeptical about our faith in that particular prosecutorial process. That said, if these allegations are deemed to be credible and this results in a guilty conviction, he of course deserves to spend the rest of his life in prison. It's been very difficult for me as a young woman in politics over the past several years to see how many of these states, like New York, like California, and many others, not treating sexual assault seriously. In fact, violent rapists are being let out of prison early. I live in Virginia today, and Virginia is currently attempting to reduce or eliminate mandatory minimum sentences for crimes like rape and sexual assault, as well as child pornography distribution and many other heinous crimes that are destroying society. So I think it's odd.
Well,
we've lived in a society that says we treat this so seriously, but you're also watching a lot of these people dilute what this crime actually means.
All right, quick break. More with Isabel Brown and Catalina Lauf on the other side as we discuss the seriousness now. Multiple women, accusations of rape against Mr. Fang Fang, Eric Swalwell. It's not a question of whether he's going to run for governor. That's off the table. Or he's going to stay a member of Congress. That's off the table. The question is, will he have jail time? Will he be convicted based on the testimony of all these women? I don't see how he's not convicted. And then it's a matter of how much time in jail he gets. More on the other side as we continue. Then your calls coming up, 800-941-SEAN as we continue.
I was not able to save money in my life until my mid to late 20s. I mean, nothing. I was living paycheck to paycheck. 40 years ago, somebody got a hold of me. I wish I remembered who, but I don't, and said, put a percentage of your savings in gold and silver. And I still to this day, I follow that advice, I still to this day put a portion of every paycheck into gold and silver. And I'm not stopping. I'm so glad I did. So if you want to learn why I keep buying, why I am a customer of Goldco, just go to HannityGold.com and see how you can get 10% in free gold or silver from my partners over at Goldco. Now, they've earned my trust. Again, I'm a customer, and they will earn yours too.
All right, we continue now with Isabel Brown and Catalina Laufa with us discussing Mr. Fang Fang, Eric Swalwell, more accusations, and we're not just talking about sexual assault here. We are talking about rape. I hesitate to ask this question, but because you're in this political environment, do you find most people are very respectful or not, Catalina?
You know, I think what it comes down to, it's partially is the media and the culture. You know, to Isabel's point, first and foremost, when you have what happened to Brett Kavanaugh, you know, over time, when this is a real rape, you know, when there's evidence, when there's real things, you don't want it to be diluted. You don't want the seriousness of what happens to females in politics, especially staffers. You know, I hear countless stories of you know, former members and members having sort of these issues with staffers, and none of it comes to light. And so I'm grateful that you have women, again, like, Congresswoman Anna Paulina Luna and others, who are finally stepping forward and using their platforms and their leadership to uncover this, because for too long, this has been going on. And so I do believe that there's respect for women, but there needs to be more women out there in positions that have platforms that are speaking out against this, because if not, it will be covered up. The Congressional Slush Fund, all of this stuff will be totally put under the rug and under the table unless you take this seriously and unless people are held accountable.
By the way, that slush fund, for people that don't know what you're referring to, that is taxpayer dollars that have been used to pay off people that make allegations. Again, their allegations doesn't necessarily mean they're true. However, they're using taxpayer money to pay people off with a non-disclosure agreement. Any such deals that are made, and they have every right to make them, ought to be paid for with their money, not with our money. Anyway, I appreciate both of you, respect both of you a lot. You're very powerful, emerging voices for young conservatives, and I admire both of you for what you do. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you, Sean.
Thanks, Sean, so much.
800-941-SEAN is our number if you want to be a part of the program. I want to tell you about a guy named Phineas. As a child, he survived the Holocaust. He survived because there were Christians that hid him from the Nazis. They risked their lives to do so. Now he's in his 80s. He can no longer stand on his own. He can't leave his home to receive medical care. When those sirens sound and those cluster bombs are fired by Israel into densely populated areas, he doesn't have the time, the strength, the physical ability to reach safety. But once again, the IFCJ, International Fellowship of Christians and Jews, are on the ground, and they're providing, all this humanitarian assistance. In this case, a mobile clinic brings doctors and medicine straight to his home, providing care that he would not receive otherwise during wartime. He said, Christians saved my life during the Holocaust, and now again they are helping me. And as Israel's Holocaust Remembrance Day is approaching, we honor survivors, people like Phineas, not just with words, but with action. And right now, whatever aid you can offer is desperately needed. They're providing food and water and clothing and medications and these clinics that go door to door and housing. You name it, they're providing it all. Whatever donation you can give, please give generously. This is their time of need as they fight for their survival. It's 888-888-488-IFCJ, 888-488-IFCJ, or you can simply give online. It's ifcj.org. That's ifcj.org today.